Game design documents can be vital for keeping track of the details of your project. But if you're making a game for the first time, do you really need one? Are they actually important? And if they are, what's the best way to make one for your game? After all, there are many different ways to make a game design document in different formats and including different information. But while there are a lot of ways you could make one, there's generally only one reason for doing it in the first place. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the basic methods of approaching a game design document, how to decide what goes in it, and importantly, how to tell if you need one at all. If you're serious about learning how to write your own scripts, then try my online course, How to Code in Unity, where you'll learn the basics of C# scripting, how to solve problems with code, and best practice principles to help you start and finish your game. So why would you need a game design document? Generally speaking, all game design documents exist to do just one thing. They allow you to explain your game idea to someone else. That's it. This is the one reason for making a game design document, and if you ever find yourself unsure about whether or not you need one, this is the question to ask yourself. Will you need to communicate the details of your game to another person? At this point, you might be thinking that because you're working on your game alone, this means that you don't need a game design document. But it's not quite as simple as that, because the other person that you may need to communicate your idea to is probably going to be you. After all, the ideal process of translating a game idea that you have in your head into a real game would be to magically create it instantly, fully formed and exactly as you imagined it. But that's not possible, and even if it was, the reality is that your game idea, even if you have an exceptionally clear vision of what it should be like, will be incomplete. Things will change, new ideas will replace old ones, and as you start to build your game, the process of iteration will push its development in different directions. So where does that leave you? Does that mean that there's no point in making a game design document, since it's all going to change through iteration anyway? Not exactly. If your game is small enough, there's no reason that you can't keep the general idea in your head and then build out the details of your game through experimentation. But if you can't do that, because you're going to forget information that's important to the direction of your project, then you will need some kind of game design document to keep it on track. So assuming that you will need one, how do you make one? The concept of a game design document can be a surprisingly divisive topic, with some developers suggesting that they are completely obsolete. However, it's less the case that documenting your game's design is an obsolete practice, and more so that development processes in general have become more flexible. For example, when you think of a design document, then traditionally you might picture a large text file that's full to the brim with every detail of your game and how it's going to work. And if that's what you need for your project, then there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if you're making a game on your own, it's highly unlikely that you'll need to go into that much detail, at least not at first, since most of your game's finer features are likely to change as soon as you start putting them together. So what should you start with? A good place to start is the core concept of the game, which is typically a high-level description of what the player will do, and the game's design pillars, which are the design goals that every other decision you make about the game will be compared against. These will typically be up to around 4 or 5 of the most important elements of your game that reflect what the player will be spending their time doing and how you want that to make them feel. These should be broad concepts and activities, like exploration, combat, or crafting. They can even be abstract emotions or experiences, like teamwork, discovery, or creativity. Whatever you pick, resist the urge to add more and more design pillars in order to accommodate all of the ideas that you have for your game. The point here is to identify what's most important, and that means leaving everything else out, including features that may end up in your project but that aren't vital to its identity. These core elements might be tricky to pin down, but it's important to get this bit right, since all of your game's finer details and decisions will need to support the design pillars in some way. Along with the overarching design principles, a basic game design document might also include some of the game's main mechanics or controls, so that it's possible to get an idea of what the game will be like to play. You might also add any early ideas you have for the game's visual style, what it might sound like, or what kind of music might end up being used. Or if the narrative of the game is important, this is where you might outline the basic story. Finally, you could add a rough timeline with some milestones that you're hoping to hit during development. This is a very basic design document, but it's probably going to be more than enough to get you started, at least to identify what you should be working on first, and enough to prompt most of the design decisions you're going to have to make in the early stages of your game. The general idea is to start with a one-page document like this, and transition to a more detailed design document that spans multiple pages, and that might include specific mechanics, story elements, or style guides as your game gets bigger and more complex. But large written design documents can be difficult to maintain, and importantly, difficult to use, which is a big problem. After all, your design document is useless if nobody, yourself included, is willing to read it. Which is why the format of your design document is at least as important as what's in it. Format matters, and I can prove it. Imagine you're building your own house. In your head, you know exactly how it's going to look, and every window, every wall, every perfectly placed brick is amazingly a crystal clear image in your mind. It's beautiful, but you can't build houses, so you hire a builder. And now you need to communicate your idea to someone else. You need a design document. But can you imagine trying to explain to a builder what your dream house is supposed to look like using a Word document? Even if your description was perfect, beautifully organised and well written, a text document for this purpose makes no sense and would be extremely difficult or outright impossible to actually use. It doesn't matter how good the information is, if it's in the wrong format, it's not going to help you. Whereas a blueprint of the house, even though it contains the same information, would be much more useful to the builder. As a result, when you make any kind of design document, first you'll need to decide what's going to go in it, and then you'll need to decide the best way to present it. So how do you decide what goes in it? What goes in your design document depends heavily on who it's for. For example, if you're pitching your game to someone who is considering whether or not to invest money in it, then the format of your design document should reflect that. It should explain how you plan to market the game, who it's targeted at, and why you believe it will be successful. Chances are, however, that the first kind of design document you're likely to want to make is one that helps you to actually design the game. And in many cases, just like when building your house, being able to see what it's supposed to look like is usually a good place to start. And one way to do that is with the one-page method. The one-page method is a game design document approach that focuses your ideas and helps you to present them in a way that's easy to use. This method was described by Stone Lebrande in his one-page design GDC talk, and typically involves using illustrations, charts or maps along with call-out information to describe how a feature or a mechanic or an entire area of your game is supposed to work, all from a single page. But why one page? There are a couple of reasons why limiting your design document to a single page can work well. First, one page is often about as much as anyone is willing to read. And remember, when I say anyone, that includes you. Limiting your design to a single sheet means that it will actually be used. It also forces you to think of the most effective way to describe your idea, without relying on other pages or resources to do the job for you. So whether that's a map, or a chart, or a drawing, one-page documents focus your design on the most important element, while still allowing detail through callouts, info boxes, and notes. But one of the most beneficial reasons for limiting your design to one page is that it keeps your design document concise, meaning that you can make it quickly and change it easily. So how do you make one? The first thing you'll need to do to make a one-page design document is to decide what its purpose is. So for example, you might decide that you're going to design a particular part of your game, such as the combat system or a level or the gameplay loop. It can be something specific, or it could be broad and abstract, but what's important is that your design document has just one focus, not several, and that its focus is clearly described, typically with a title. This is the design document's objective, and it's incredibly important to pin this down. Otherwise, your document won't have a focus, meaning that it will be difficult to decide what should go in it and difficult to use, since you won't know at a glance what the document is going to contain. However, one focus doesn't mean one thing. Instead, it simply means that your game design document is focused on one objective. But that objective may include multiple aspects and systems. This is reflected in the format of the document, which typically includes a main focus illustration or chart with added detail, usually in the form of callouts that support the document's main objective. This way, the focus of the document is clear, but the detail is still there when you need it. For example, if you're designing a level, then you might draw a map, with callouts to pinpoint items, routes, or enclosed areas which themselves can be further secondary maps with their own callouts and information. If you're designing a combat system, the focus of your document could be a chart that shows the different moves a player can perform, depending on the weapon they're using and the button they press, where the added detail could be the relationship between the controls and the available actions. Or, if you're feeling ambitious, there's nothing to say that you can't design your entire game on one page. This is possible because your one page doesn't have to be a small page. It can be as big as you need it to be. It can be an endless document that increases with the size and complexity of your project. But this can only work if you follow the one-page methodology, a single focus that can be expanded to relevant detail. Everything you add to the page must support its objective, and it must be linked to it in some way. Otherwise, you'd just be creating multiple design documents and putting them in one place. In which case, if you're going to try to design your entire game on a single page, you'll probably want to put your design pillars right at the center, expanding them out into the systems and mechanics that will actually make them happen. Now I want to hear from you. Are you using a design document, or are you making up your project as you go? And what have you learned about keeping track of your game's development that you know someone else would find useful? Whatever it is, let me know by leaving a comment, like this video if it helped you, and get subscribed for more videos from me. I'll see you next time.